especially, I know the traffic is going to be very bad with the Mardi Gras and all that, but so at least you're all here. Once every 2 years, we have this exhibition, Drawn by Design, the Art of Architecture. So it showcases the talent of all the architects. This is actually the third exhibition we have. Every time we do it, I have a lot of fun because I always like to talk to architects, and it's sort of like an opportunity once every 2 years to be able to do that. And I think all architects probably could be artists as well. I mean, in fact, they are artists of the built environment. But at the same time, they are so multi-talented that it's good to showcase their work. You know, it's a variety of drawings, sketches, paintings, and even three-dimensional work. So 2 years ago, I asked Edmund to come and open this show, but unfortunately something happened last minute, and so we're lucky to have Peter Pinson to open the show. So finally, 2 years later, we got Edmund to come back, and there's no better person to talk about this. Always, yeah.
Much better people.
So I don't think Edmund needs any introduction, but he's the former director of New South Wales Art Gallery. He's always been, engaged with the arts. He's been at the New South Wales Art Gallery for a long time, and so while he was the director, I could never ask him to come here and open the show. So it's a perfect time now that he's no longer a director to ask him to come along. So I'd like you all to welcome Edmund Capon.
Thank you. Thanks, Simon. Actually, it was intriguing sitting down there, knowing there was a small room here. It was a question of counting how many people could come out of one small room. Actually, we've got to get first things straight. I mean, what we've got here, what Simon is doing here, of course, is getting the pragmatic architects into the sacred confines of the art gallery. It's a subversive, totally subversive thing he's up to. But the first thing you realise going around the show is that these architects, you guys, you get around. You get around. Look around here. Angkor, Varanasi, Paris, Cook Islands, Yangon, Istanbul, Siena, Cortona, Ravello, Madeira, Moscow, and Mudgee. Actually, the other day I was lamenting with somebody the sad demise of handwriting. Yes. And because people don't write don't use pen and ink. I do. I use pen and ink and get ink everywhere. And I said, yeah, but architects do, because architects write beautifully. Most of them do. So it's quite right that they should be able to draw as well. Unlike art curators and doctors who, as we know, cannot write. Yeah, they deal with the dreaded computer. And as we were saying the other day with Johanni Plasma, I said, great buildings and great architecture doesn't come out of a computer. It comes out of the human mind and imagination. Anyway, obviously there's a natural compatibility between architecture and art. Now, I made some notes here, which if an architect can't define their concept with their own instinctive drawing and with the intimacy and the personality of drawing, then somehow the building will always show that. It will always show that it's kind of like what they do. The virtual, somebody in China's built a house in 5 minutes out of cardboard or something. Did you see it? There's something there. It's a kind of virtual house, but you can live in it if you want to. But the idea of that intimacy of drawing, where you can actually see the process of the mind. I always loved drawing, and I shall never forget a show I was doing years and years ago about drawing the figure, and it was about for the Olympics, that great festival of running, jumping, and standing still, and we did a show about drawing the figure from Michelangelo up to John Olsen, not the two ever met, and I was looking at a Michelangelo drawing. You can see that line, that intimacy, that contact between the mind, the heart, the soul, the arm, the pencil and the drawing. And I think that's the quality that you see here. You can feel that moment of the imagination actually creating things. Actually, I used to talk to Lloyd Rees a lot, as you probably know. He was almost an architect rather than an artist. And we talked a great deal about architecture, which he clearly loved. And he pointed something out to me. When he made a comment that I realized one day, and this is the creative mind, the visual imagination, whether you're an artist or an architect, doesn't matter. And it was in Tuscany. We got up one morning, it was January, and looked out over the landscape, and there was a cold, frosty morning, and I realized that what made that landscape beautiful, and this is something that I went back and told Lloyd Rees later, and he said, that's exactly how I feel, was not the landscape itself, but the way that it has been articulated or punctuated by buildings. That was what made that landscape so exquisite. And so the architects, I've never thought of architects as anything but artists, to be perfectly honest. I've always thought of architecture as the manifestation, as the most pervasive manifestation of the visual arts. And I made some notes because I was interested in something that was said by Hugh Casson a long time ago. I didn't quote it to you because I'm going to find it. Excuse me. Oh yeah, Hugh Casson, you know, who's the architect, designer, and president of the Royal Academy in London. He said, few people like architects, fewer still like journalists, which is understandable. But both in the public eye share to an equal degree the faults of incompetence and vanity. It's a bit strident, isn't it? But it reminded me, and I just thought, I thought about that for a moment. Artists are actually held in great esteem, and probably more esteem than architects, because they're seen as sort of pragmatic, and their sort of imaginative and creative values are compromised by necessity, which I suppose might happen. And I remember having a conversation with a photographer called Rosemary Lang, you probably know, and she was saying that, you know, 30 years ago when she was a young artist, you know, photographer, you said you were an artist, then people thought you were on the dole. That's what it was her comment, and it's right. Artists have become, you know, esteemed members of the community, and probably more so than architects. I wondered why that was. But there's another comment here which I just want to bring to your attention, because this is by Pevsner, and it's about the value of architecture. And he said that an age without painting and sculpture is conceivable, if not exactly desirable. But an age without architecture is actually inconceivable. And I think it's rather a sage point. I think it's absolutely right. And when I look around here, you know, I can see the architect's mind, I can see that intimacy, and I can see that wonderful association between the mind, the imagination, and the creation. And somehow, you know, architects, the better the draftsmen they are, the more wonderful their architecture is going to be. There's no doubt about that. And as I've said to Ken often, I said, yeah, architecture is not about building. Building is functional. Architecture is inspirational. Thank you. Bye.